So why don't we start with like understanding what the bleep or what the hell is Wabi Sabi? Let's start there. Man, this is going to be awesome. Got Jim. It's so great to have you on. And we've been fighting through technology and been flying across the world, halfway around the world to do this. I'm so excited to do this with you.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Looking forward to where we go, Laurence.
Well, like before we go anywhere, we have to kind of know, decide. Like I think in any planning, right? We all talk about goal setting and we all talk about, creating a plan. I think in light of the start of this podcast, we kind of have to give our audience to kind of go, where are we going? So why don't we start with like understanding what the bleep or what the hell is Wabi Sabi? Let's start there.
Well, I think it'd be a great idea, and I'd love you to start with that first, Laurence, because when we were looking at we're gonna collate, we're gonna bring concepts and ideas together. We're gonna start off with the name. You threw this one out to me, and I think this was pretty much it. I was like, "What the hell is Wabi Sabi?" So I think everybody's going to start with this and to go, "Okay, I'm going to listen to you guys, but you gotta let me know what the hell this is all about." So
Okay, so let's start with the definition, like not the true definition. I'll butcher it because everybody who knows me is like I'm terrible with English and definitions and spelling and stuff. So, but I'll do.
It's called paraphrase. It's called paraphrrazing. It's called paraphrasing. Anytime you say that, you go, "Listen, I'm going to paraphrase here," and that gives you poetic license to stuff it up.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So I'm paraphrasing the dictionary. But basically, I heard this term Wabi Sabi, which was really interesting because Wabi Sabi is a Japanese term actually, and it is about. Have you ever seen, Jim, those bowls? And you see these bowls in Japan. They're obviously beautiful, crafted, like it's just perfection. Japanese do everything so perfect, right? But what's really interesting, because they do everything so perfect, there's these type of bowls. I'm sure you've seen it where like it looks like there's cracks in it, right? Like literally cracks in it, but they fill these cracks with like gold. Okay, so it makes it such a more of a unique. So it's almost like this perfect bowl, but yet cracked. And so they, instead of just leaving the crack there, they filled the cracks with gold. And Wabi Sabi is really a philosophy, a philosophy to really embrace life's imperfection. Okay,
right.
And that's why I thought of his name. I just, when we were thinking about titles and things, and this is where I kind of came up. You know what? Your life, my life right now is imperfect. Right? I mean, let's face it, all human beings' life are imperfect, but we're on this journey of discovery, and this journey of discovery has its imperfection. And because I feel like it's a really good contrast, the reason why is because we live in the social media world in 2022. As we move on, there's this life of social media that we are constantly comparing ourselves, constantly not necessarily comparing, but we're always have the backdrop of all of our friends, colleagues, and extended Facebook friends that are, on our list that we see in our feed, that most of the time creates a sense of perfection, at least in our eyes. And we always
everybody everybody always puts their highlight reels up on social media as well too, right? So everybody's going to show you the front of stage.
Yes.
And you're thinking, okay, well, no one will ever show you the back of stage, and you have a perception that that's what it's like all the time.
Exactly. And it's a weird filter. Like, even though you know that, and we are sure everybody listening knows that, but yet we can't help ourselves to not create some comparison internally. And I think this is like, and so I think the Wabi Sabi philosophy is really important for us to embrace that there is imperfection in life, and to actually lean into it rather than shying away from it.
Okay.
What do you think?
So I think I think the relevance, why this resonated really well with me was, I love the description you had about the cracks and the gold, because in personal growth and development work, they basically say those wounds, those cracks, those scars, that's where you've been touched by life, right? That shows your, the scars on your face show that what you've paid, the dues you've paid in life. And to me, I think that's beautiful, because it shows the beauty that you can basically embrace even those cracks. It's like, what's the lesson? What's the learning? What's the magic in that? And to me, that's what I took when you were saying that. And I think the reason why I love this as a concept, because initially, like my first instinct was, okay, Laurence, you got to tell me what is this? But then when I researched it as well, I thought this is actually really beautiful and it's brilliant and it highlights really about the essence of what we're going to be talking about, right? So really and our personal stories will come through. We both support and help a lot of people individually. And due to, I guess, our similarity in our personal journeys of late, we looked at this and came together and had discussions. And out of this, the changes, the variations, the imperfections, the throw things up and down and just make them best of the situation, it was really the genesis of where this all came from. So to me, I think as a philosophy, it will epitomize everything that we're going to be talking about, but also what we're living.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing with regards to all our lives. It's that it's filled with bumps and bruises. And I just love the, one, I'm going to again paraphrase what Muhammad Ali once said, is like, everybody sees see him as a champion, but no one ever sees you training in the middle of the night to lead up to that championship or something to that effect. And that's the thing. Like we embody these heroes of ours, or we look up to all these champions, and we really do not see how much work they put behind the scenes to get to that level. And the amount of dedication they put in, one of the players I, used to follow quite a bit, the late great Kobe Bryant. And I remember picking one of his books up and it's like, it was mostly like a photograph book. Like it was just like all the pictures and highlights, but he actually wrote a lot of things in it. And then as I'm reading it and you listen, and also too, you listen to like other players talk about Kobe Bryant, you really start to really see and understand like this guy, he was out of his mind, like, in comparison to most people. Like, he was a league of his own in the sense of how much he trained. Like this one story about him was like this, this guy would show up at the gym. He said, I wanted to be the first one in the gym. So he shows up at 5 a.m. in the morning. Right. So he goes at 5 a.m. and he's like, it's pitch black, but the court, the lights were on, and he can hear this bouncing ball. I'm like, who in the world is there? He goes up and he goes, oh, there is Kobe Bryant practicing. And he's sweating and he's dribbling, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go in anyways. And so he goes in and starts shooting for an hour or so, an hour and a half. And Kobe's still there, right? So then he gets off the court and he's like, okay, man, like, he's still shooting. So then he gets off the court, and then Kobe comes off the court. They play that night against each other. Okay. And then Kobe destroys them with like 40 points. And then at the end of the game, he goes, okay, I got to know, like, what the hell is going on? You practiced like as much as I did in the morning. You showed up. I was there at 5 a.m. and you even showed up. You were there before me, and then you just beat us down. Like, how do you do it? He goes, like, what were you doing? And he was saying to him, he was like, oh, I was just about to leave, but then I saw you show up. Right.
That's right. That's right.
And I said, basically Kobe stayed on the court because I said, I just want to make sure you knew that no one outworks me. Like that was his Mamba mentality. Right. And that is that essence that no one sees behind the scenes, and how much effort these athletes that we admire put in the work. Now, not all athletes, some people are just, talented, whatever, but these are talent plus something else. Like they have this mentality that shifts inside of them.
Yeah, it's the old saying, isn't it? The whole luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And so, but Kobe, you're right. Kobe was elite, the elitist of the elite, who actually, there's one step. There's one thing to say, I worked hard to become number one. Staying at that level is a totally different game and mindset, because you're now then not chasing the leader, you are the leader. So you have to keep progressing. So that's a different psychology. You talk about stories. I want to go in another I want to contrast the story for you, because in my world, how you talk about life's imperfections, right? I always say to myself, I've got this running joke in my family. Look, the Olympics are coming around. I better get ready. I may get this call up, blah, blah, blah. And my kids are sick of hearing it for the last 15 years. They go, Dad, listen, you're just talking fishing stories here. You're talking rubbish. But I said to them, no. Opportunities do come, and occasionally out of left field, but you've got to be ready for those, right? So a few years ago here in Australia, we play cricket. And I always used to say, that one day the
Jim, you're
Australian
no
cricket
longer in
team's gonna
Australia,
call
by the
me
way,
up,
buddy.
and
You're
I
not in
know,
Australia, my man.
This was back in that time. Okay, it's unlikely going to be the Spanish one. There's probably less chance now than the Australian one. But hey, let me dream, right? Don't kill the dream. As let me go with this. So I said, this cricketer, this Australian cricketer, he was at a game and he was watching the game. He was and the Australian team, the Australian A cricket team. So not the first tier, but the next level. They were having basically a game, and he was in the stands. He was a state player. I forget his name in WA. And here he was having a pie and a soft drink in the outer, just watching the game. Suddenly one of the guys got injured, and he's gone from eating the pie and the soft drink to watch the game to getting called up to play representing his country.
Wow.
Now, I always laugh at that, right? I always laugh at that because it makes for a great story. But the thing is, you can look at it one or two ways and go, oh, yeah, guy fluked it. He happened to be in the right place at the right time. I go, yeah, but there was like 50 other thousand people. Why'd they pick him? Because he had actually done the work to get to the state level. And when the opportunity came, he took it. He might have had a sore belly and not have been prepared optimally to represent his country, but the chance came and he took it. And so I live in the hope that occasionally, now that I live in Barcelona may call me up and say, hey, listen, we've got a spot. Highly unlikely. But to me, that's embracing the imperfections, the what ifs, and we apply that to particularly the realm where we do a lot of work in business, Laurence, is like sometimes you don't know when the opportunity comes. You may not have prepared for it as well as you want. May not be as ready as you want to be, but when the opportunity comes, you take it, you go. That's just the way life plays out.
Well, like we've been talking a lot about like the elite of the elites, right? And the pros, but this goes right back down to like the normal day-to-day things too as well. Like you think about like you do jiu-jitsu, I do CrossFit, let's use that as an example. Like, why do we lift heavy things? Why do we toss people around? It's not like we do that every day. Like people might say like, well, why do you do that? Well, it's because you never know when you need to do something with your body to create that. Or you may never know that you might be put in a situation where your body requires that much strength or to protect yourself or just to live a longer life, right? It's like, those are all the little things. And, we are both in healthcare, and when we talk to patients and we, when we give advice, it's like, you cannot change your health just because you want to one day. Like you literally have to make a commitment for life to get there. And it's one day at a time. It's focused on the process. And I think that's the philosophy that I've always embraced on. Like it's about the process. It's never about the destination and what you're trying to get to. And it's about, I want to live to 100 years old. But here's the thing though. Most people wouldn't, because their imagination of a 100-year-old is like someone who's frail and like, barely walking. No, my imagination of 100 years old is that I'm still functional. I want to be like running. I still want to be able to like move, and my brain is still active. So I'm trying to do everything possible to make sure I maximize that and minimize the deterioration. I don't know if that's only the next 50 years will
no, man, but you got to keep that, right. But you got to keep challenging yourself, right? What do we talk about? The neuroplasticity of it. You're constantly adapting. You're constantly creating change. And here's the thing too. Here's a mantra that we've always used in training is you don't rise to the level of your expectation. You default to your level of preparation. Exactly. So basically, what that's saying is you can talk up a big game, but fundamentally, when push comes to shove, you will only default to the level of preparation. So, if, like you said, Laurence, you're CrossFitting, and the whole purpose behind CrossFit is functional strength. So you're actually able to use the movements that you have each and every day for longevity.
That's right.
And that's fundamentally it. And so when something happens and you go, hey, you leapfrog a fence, or you lift up something, most people go, gee, how'd you do that? It's like, well, 5 a.m. every time I've been going I've been preparing for this. I've been working on this. This is not something I do. This is who I am.
Yeah.
Fundamentally is the imperfection. And you might look at this and compare yourself to, I now don't have hair and I'm a little bit older than I was when I felt like I was in my peak. And so if I compare myself to the 25-year-old supreme athletes that I'm training against, that's going to smash me. So that's the imperfection with the whole thing that we're talking about. It's like you're extracting and competing with yourself not with anybody else.
Yeah.
And if it helps you, great. You can use a marker and competitive edge, but you're going to get to a point, and I think I'm acutely aware of this now as I'm getting older, is it's got to be less about somebody else and more about me and my own journey and why I do that and what I get out of that.
But you know what, Jim? That is so freaking hard. I gotta say, like, that is so hard, isn't it? Like, I don't know about
100%, 100%.
Like, you know, especially when it comes to men in, you know, competition, it's just like we can say like, oh, let's be friendly. Let's just like this, but it's just hard. Right. And I want to admit that to everybody because it's you know, I know it's that's what we're supposed to do, but I guarantee you when you in the middle of a WOD in an exercise and you're like, I'm just competing myself. But you see the guy next to you and they're about the same weight or the same kind of, you want to beat them. And it's like finding that balance. So let me ask you this though. So how do you find that balance between competing against yourself, but also looking at the guy next to you or the girl next to you and go, okay, how do I use them to help me leverage to be my best?
Yeah, 100%. Like, don't get me wrong. When I say that, the moment I walk onto a mat, I'm competitive. I'm competitive to my level. But it's funny. Clint Eastwood said two big things that I really found helpful. He says, never let the old man move in. Okay. They said to him, what's the key to you not to staying young? He said, never let the old man move in. So fundamentally, it's a mindset. So I you're embraced. Heck, you and I moved from a really awesome, great life with our families in one part of the world to another, right? That, you know, like, that keeps you young. That keeps you like, holy smoke, I've got to adapt here because there's change going on. This is like CrossFit put in life terms, right? So number one is finding the balance and harmony between not letting the old man move in. And number two, another Clint Eastwoodism is man's got to know his limitations. So fundamentally, that's where ego play comes into it as well, because I will compete and do the best I can, but I think what maturity has taught me is the distinction between my own reference of what I am capable to do and ego. And so I can actually park that and surrender it and stay humble and have humility to go, dude, you're much better than I am. But I'm going to give you 100% of what I've got. And that 100% may be less than it was when I was in my 20s, but it's still 100%. And so when you're in my 80s, as you are, when you're doing CrossFit and I'm doing jiu-jitsu, and my 80% would probably be, compared to an 8-year-old kid, it's like I have to accept that. But I'm giving 100% of myself. And once I do that, I'm at peace with that.
Yeah, and it's that, I think that because it's such that's a beautiful quote, by the way. I love that. It's because it's the paradigm, right, between those 2 points, and it's finding that fine line and being able to live in that zone, and being in the zone takes a lot of awareness, and that's what I think that's where we got to get to, is like people have to spend enough time to create self-awareness for themselves, and the awareness of like where is too much and when is it too little, and you got to know what you err towards typically. Like if you err towards comfort most of the time, then you know that you might need to push a little to get into that zone. But if you constantly injuring yourself because you're pushing too hard, then maybe you should be erring more for the comfort side. And I think that takes a bit of self-awareness within yourself.
It's a calibration, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Calibration.
That's a perfect word for it. Yeah. Calibration is
and the other thing too. The other thing is too that I was going to say is that it's identifying, like at any one time, I've done a lot of different sports, right? And I'm not going to compete at an elite level in jiu-jitsu. It's not about that. It's embracing the whole concept of what we're talking about in this podcast. It's about I'm a better human when I'm doing that. I feel more calm and at peace. That to me is what that's about. I'm still putting in 100%, but fundamentally, like if I asked you in the middle of a WOD, hey, are you having fun, Laurence? I reckon you'd say exactly the same thing that I'd say. It's like, I'm hating this right now, right? So when someone's
so much hate
and push me out, you don't ask them, hey, how's this? This doesn't look like fun because you're gagging, you're basically trying to suck in air. That's not the moment that you define that. The moment after, when you have peace, you have endorphins, you have clarity, you feel your sense of achievement, you're pushed, that's when you go, that was hard. And I hated parts of that. But you know what? I'm back again tomorrow.
Yeah.
That to me is embracing that. And there may be an element of the what or the technique that you just can't quite hit, and you look horrible doing it. But it's the repetition, it's the being prepared to just be lousy and keep trying it that gradually reveals you to you and how you evolve and develop as a human. To me, that's the journey of basically embracing the challenges that come against us.
Well, and hence right there is the Wabi Sabi, right? The imperfections in in just going through those challenges and learning from them. Like, I gotta say, Jim, like, I moved to Portugal from Australia. You moved to Spain from Australia recently. And how good is it to learn something new at this age?
Oh,
Like,
it is.
It is so challenging, but so thrilling, man. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm like,
How's your Portuguese? How's your Portuguese going?
Terrible. It's terrible. I was trying to find the Portuguese word for not very well.
I was looking. For people who are listening, who aren't watching the video, the side to side no,
like, no.
That was what was going on, and I'm like, that's a universal. You don't need the word for that. You know that there's nada. That's nothing.
Não falas Português. Yeah, no, that's there's no speaking of Portuguese right here. You
know what I've done. You know what I've done. Like today is day 74 of my 75 hard challenge, right? So
don't mess up today, buddy.
Tomorrow,
don't mess up today.
You don't want to stuff. I nearly stuffed day 70 because I wasn't feeling 100% health wise, and I only got out of bed for 2 lots of 45 minutes to do my workout. Otherwise, I would have bombed it. I went the feeling of feeling lousy for 90 minutes was less than going, I've just blown 70 days, right? So and that was the whole thing. It was like, it wasn't my best workout. It was just embracing the imperfection of it, but just honoring that agreement with self. Right?
Well,
so
I know a friend. I know a friend on day 74 forgot to take a picture.
Ooh.
Like, do you know what I mean? So like, it's the smallest little imperfections that sometimes mess things up. So
yeah.
Anyways.
You get tripped up. And a different. So, but you know what I did is, because I've been doing the challenge, what I did is I just linked an additional 1 or 2 action steps to it. So to me, I've been actually piggybacking onto the 75 hard and added Spanish lessons. And otherwise, it would have been more difficult. But you've already got a habit forming capacity. Neurologically, we just, what do they say? Neurons that wire together fire together. So basically, I've just added an extra action step to it. So now it's harder not to do it than it is to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who's thinking, asking what 75 hard is, go check it out. 75hard, I think .com. Go look it up. Like, we're not promoting it or anything, but just like, just should check it out and just see if it's something you want to consider doing for sure. But yeah, going back to learning, like let's think about
Andy Frisella runs that program. And it started off with the MFCEO podcast. Brilliant, loved it. Don't listen to it with your kids in the car, but it's phenomenal podcast that I got a lot of benefit from, and I started using that program, and I just got huge benefits in there as well. So, but to me, that was embracing the imperfections in there as well. So another capacity, another lesson for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the reason I asked, Laurence, is circling back. It is great. It is challenged. And being challenged in different ways. Like, you're in a new country, a new world. You're negotiating different things. And you and I have spoken about this so many times. We had an awesome life in Australia.
Yeah, very respectfully.
By conventional standards, from an outside looking in, it was like you got everything that you could possibly want, right? Beautiful families, fulfilling careers, helping clients, financial level of stability. So a whole lot of the metrics that would have that. And yet we still chose this, right? We still chose this process. And I don't know about you, Laurence, but a lot of the people that I support, how sometimes you have this, my kids call it the are you full of shit moment, basically, where they basically say, are you going to do what you say you tell me to do, or are you going to do it yourself as well? And I think the biggest, when I look back now, it's 3 months since I've moved to Spain. Was it 4 since you've moved to Portugal?
It's been 5 months now.
To me, the street cred, 5 months,
Yeah.
5 months, right? So the street cred that I got just by being prepared to go, okay, this is what we've been talking about. We've been embracing in your business that you just need to go for it. Don't worry about if it's not perfect, just do it. That would have been invalidated totally if our clients, our people, our kids went, you're just full of shit. You're just telling me to do something. You're not actually prepared to do it. So the currency that created, I'd love to hear your thoughts about whether you've had the same experience, but the currency and the street cred that it gave me as a coach, me as a parent, me as a friend went through the roof because they could see that in my 50s, when people don't do this, we did it and you did it. What have you found?
Yeah, very similar to me. Like for me, even before I left, even just the talk of, moving to a different country it's talk. But I know fundamentally there's a massive difference between talk and action. I don't take action on everything I talk about, but there are certain things that really move me, and I take action on those things that matters to me. And one of those things is, making this move, making the jump, selling up everything in Australia, a beautiful life. And I'm not talking like the Facebook social media, like hyped up, only showing you the best life. Like I had a really good life. Not to like, I'm not bragging or anything. I just want to put the contrast around that, context
What's
around
giving
that.
it? Yeah, it is context
I had
because it's basically just trying to say, like,
yeah.
why do you choose that when everything looked fantastic?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. I mean, I lived in a beautiful area. I would say I still feel like it's probably one of the most beautiful area in the world where I live, the northern beaches of Sydney. And I had, a great family, and everybody was happy. And it is. I mean, people do question. It goes, well, why the hell did you leave? And my answer is because I know what that life looks like in the next 5 to 10 years. It was so. I can script it to exactly what will happen in the next 5 years if I stayed there. It's so predictable.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a beautiful life. But the problem is that I'm okay with that. I already lived it for 8 years. So, does the next 5 years, is that really going to add more to my experience in my life? And the answer to that is no. I had to really question around why are we here? Like I'm talking, why are we here on Earth, not Sydney? Like, why are we here? And my wife and actually sat down during the pandemic and then just really start questioning, what are we doing? Like, as parents, what is our responsibility? What are our jobs? What are we trying to do for our kids? And we sat down, and I want to preframe this. I'm not telling you to, this is not your values. These were the values for me and my wife. Okay. So it's not like, hey, you don't have to embrace what I'm thinking, but my opinion.
Yeah. Don't do anything ridiculous like we've done by just picking everything up and moving outside of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you don't have to do something. Exactly. It could just be to start walking, or something.
Yeah,
but just, you don't do something as ridiculous as what we've just done.
Yeah. Just put that in contrast. Only just because Jim and I did it doesn't mean that you got to go do that, right? Okay. Because we actually didn't even know we were doing it until we were just having a conversation. And goes, hey, guess what? This is what we're doing. I'm like, oh, no way. Like, this is what we're doing. So I was like, we just have to be in two different countries side by side.
It was independent.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't even talk about it prior to this. But so for me, between my wife and I, Karen, and we basically sat down and came up with this conclusion that we wanted to create experiences. And when we say experiences, meaning like the experiences that, create memories for our family. My daughter's 14 now and my son's 11. And really, there's not that much time left with them in a sense of like being at home with them. Of course, I have a whole entire life. But there's a colleague in an entrepreneur group that I belong to. His name is Jim Shields. He came up with this concept. He runs a program called 18 Summers. Right. So think about that. 18 summers. Like that's how much time you have with your kids on average. 18 summers. Okay.
Yeah.
And you really think about that because they're going to school majority of the time. And you have 18 summers, those 2 months every single year, 18. Right. So that's only 36 months. Right. And that's not a long time to be with your kids. But when you spread it out for so long, you don't think about it. So, my daughter, 14 years old, assuming that she still wants to hang out with us, that's 4 years. My son's 7 years. And so we really want to go, no, we got to do something to create experiences for ourselves because we know what this life is and it will be exactly the same. I just felt like I was going through Groundhog Day, to be honest with you. And I needed something different.
Yeah.
And And to be honest with you, we'll talk about this in later episodes, but when I make tough choices, I don't look at what the benefits are, because they're both great, of whether I stayed or go. But what I look at is the consequence. The consequence of me not moving scared me way more than if I moved. Like the consequence of moving here would be like learning a new language, how to adapt to a new culture, blah, 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 blah. But staying in Sydney, staying in a life that I already know and predictable, holy crap, that's just scared the living daylights out of me. And I'm like, I'm out of here. Like, I got to go.
No, makes sense. And really from that perspective, Laurence, it's same sort of thing with me. Was like, there's so many parallels, and I think this was the catalyst of why we even started even entertaining the thought of getting a podcast going and having a discussion, because there were parallel journeys along the way. My kids are a little bit older. They're 26 and 22. So I've had the 18 summers with them. What allowed me to make that decision was, funny enough, when they were 13 or 14, I was practicing as a chiropractor back then. And I was working Saturdays, and I was working some pretty intense time. It would have been, they were about 12, my youngest son. And I remember distinctly, as they were starting to play more sport, I went, I'm going to be at every game. I'm going to do it. And I was. And so I wrote this letter to the people in our practice at the time, said, listen, I'm not working Saturdays anymore. I'm basically going to be a taxi driver. I'm going to ferry my kids to every game. And I still want to hang around them while they still think I'm cool. And I showed the letter to my 12-year-old son at the time. And as a 12 or 13-year-old son quite often does, kind of brings you back to reality sometimes. He goes, see, that's the problem, Dad. We never thought you were cool, right? So that was just a big reality check. So here I was going, I want to do this for you. And he goes, oh, man, but I had those. And I had those moments, and they were priceless. And I made those great decisions, and I have cherished memories, so that when the opportunity came for us to come to Spain, to basically a legacy piece, and we'll talk about this later on in subsequent episodes in terms of what are compelling reasons why people do what they do. The opportunity came for us, and the first people we spoke to were our kids as well. We just said, listen, here's an opportunity for do this. How do you feel about us doing that? And they went, you know what? It's one of those, basically it's the earn the right moments, when they went, you know what? Our whole life you said you got to back yourself, you got to do and here's the opportunity for you to live exactly what you've been saying. And we were in. Yeah. We had to basically put all in, because here's the thing, and this is the imperfections that happen. Sometimes you're going to go all in and it's not going to work out, right? It's not always a fairy tale that everybody lives happily ever after. You sometimes got to go all in to find out what it required to get to that next step. And the feedback may be, it wasn't great, it wasn't good, you need to change. Okay, that's life. That's the reality of it. But to me, I think, Laurence, same sort of thing as you said. If I make a decision and I've got to be all in, and I've got to take massive action. And one of the things I do is I leverage myself to then go, okay, I'm going to go to people that I care about and say, I'm going to do this. Because, like the fear of staying stagnant for you is the same. So for me, of saying something that I don't honor is something that I don't do. So my word is my bond. And if I say to someone I'm going to do it, I'll find a way. And so the moment that we made a decision that, okay, we're going, we declared it and proclaimed it and shared it with our closest people to say, well, I'm committed to this and I'm going to go all in.
Yeah, like the massive action thing, it's such an important thing, which a lot of us we take it for granted on what that actually means. Like massive action requires, you to somewhat burn the boats, when I was talking this through, my, mastermind groups and other people that I kind of was floating the idea around moving, and I said, I'm just preparing my house to sell, and they're like, oh, well, why don't you just keep your house and maybe just sort of rent it out, just in case it doesn't work out. And it's like, I'm like, no, but that's like, I don't want it to, like, I'm not planning to fail here, but it doesn't mean I won't fail, but it's like, no, I want to, like, we can go back. Of course. I'm an Australian citizen. Like, I've been there for 20 years. I can always go back. But I want to make sure I remove all ties and just go for it and give it all my God, because if I have a backup plan,
it's an energetic, it's energetic, right? Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the backup plan. So I cut over you then, but that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's the backup plan. It's just, it creates this when tough gets going, it's like, oh, we'll just go back to what we're normal. That it didn't work out, but to me, like, that's not really giving it all your all. And I think, but please understand, as you're listening to or watching this, to understand that these moves that we're making can seem really risky to a lot of people, right? I understand that from that perspective. People can see like that's crazy. I could never do that. And my answer to that is that yes, you can do it. You just choose not to, first of all. So not to like push back on that, but just to kind of really say that that's true. You're just a plane ticket away to do something like that. But the second thing is that you also got to remember is that it's very, very calculated. Okay. I want to say that really clearly. Jim and I didn't make this move just go off one day and going, the hell with it. Let's just give this a go. Okay. It's not like all of a sudden let's bet it all on black.
It's not impulsive, mate. It's not impulsive.
It's calculated.
Yeah, that's it.
And going back to the original story we talked about when we first started this podcast about like Muhammad Ali and the Kobe Bryant's, like, they're champions and people never seeing like the way they train and the nights and blood and sweat they put into it, right? Well, that's what you don't see. You just saw us moving. You just saw us making the move and doing all that, but you never saw the amounts of hours of calculating and making sure all the things are aligned to ensure that we could take this risk. So it's I'm a very risk adverse personality, even though people don't think that. I am very risk adverse, but they're all calculated risk and probabilities.
Yep.
I believe that probability that, things are going to work out, but it's also, I put myself in that position to increase the probability and the odds. And the same thing for you too. So I think that's really important to kind of see. I'm shedding that that side that most people don't think about, because they see the side of us taking the leap, but you never saw the work that got us to the edge in the first place. I think that's the whole point that we want to kind of really
and exactly. And Lauren, what I was going to say too, add to that as well, is not just the leap, but the continual leaps. Because 5 months you've been left in Australia, how ordered is your home life right
I've been
now?
living in an Airbnb. This is my 4th Airbnb in the last 6 months.
Yep.
It's costing me a fortune.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And like I said, we found an apartment in here, which is awesome. But it's nowhere near furnished. Our stuff's in transit. Some things that we just go, listen, I don't want to just buy stuff. Remember how I was telling you, Laurence, about I'm buying things, and we had this agreement in our house. My wife, Bettina, and I said, listen, unless we love it, we're not buying it. So we went through a period where we were eating off plastic plates because we hadn't had the opportunity to go and buy dinner plates, right? And so the concept of this work of this podcast, we reflect back and go, 6 months ago, what the hell were we doing? Everything was structured on. Now I'm eating off plastic plates in there. That's the embracing the imperfections, absolutely, right? So I have no regrets on the change. There are times where I go, is it bumpy? Is it awkward? Are there cracks in the ball that we're filling in at the moment with gold at the moment? 100%.
I mean, if you look back at my videos from like 6 months ago, I had beautiful lights in the background. Where am I? Like, I'm in my daughter's bedroom, like this. Like, look, it's all crap on the floor. I'm sitting on a chair, and like there's no lighting, nothing. We're just embracing and just doing whatever it takes to. I'm borrowing my son's laptop to record on this because it won't work on my iPad. But that's the imperfections that we're talking about, and being able to take action on things even despite having things aligned. And I think there's a saying that people go, I'll get all my ducks aligned before and then we'll take action. But you got to remember, the ducks don't get into line unless they're actually moving, right? Think about that for a second. Like, they move and then they get into line, not that they get into line and then they move, right? So I think people forget that part, is that you have to be moving, and then the ducks will kind of line up for you, and things will show up, and things, certain doors will close, but certain doors will open. And I think, to kind of finish up on that point around the learning side of things and the reason why we left, the other reason was also because my kids are a little bit younger and they were born in Australia. I wanted them to experience a different, we talked about experience a different life, but also experience challenge, right? Like experiencing how to adapt to a new world, to a new culture, to a new country, to a new language. Man, you can't replicate that in Australia, right? It's just something so different. Like for them to be able, of course, and I'll be honest with you, to share our imperfection, like it's not been a smooth ride, go to a brand new school, being a new kid, sure, they're going to international school, but like leaving all their friends from what they've known for the last few years to a new school with no friends, it's challenging. It's, there's definitely tears, but I don't like them to go through it, but I kind of want them to go through it, if that makes any sense. I'm not trying to be cruel, but it's also being like that's what's they're gonna have to go through at some point in their life. And rather than them learn how to deal with those emotions when they're young, rather than figuring out when they're older. Because I find that the older we get and we experiencing pain that we never experienced when we're younger can really create some spirals in our lives. And I want to try to challenge them in that way now while we're there to support them and to help them navigate through those emotions.
Yeah, effectively what you're doing is you're developing the resiliency muscle, so it's the whole principle behind childhood illnesses. Strengthen up your immune system so that as you get older, there's a resistance there. It's the same thing where, and somewhat controversial philosophy, but I've always believed in a merit-based meritocracy, and I've never been, like I said, people go, okay, I've listened to you now, up until this point you're out, but I always feel there's a lesson and a learning in not winning and actually taking that and regrouping and coming back to it. So I've never been a fan of everybody gets a prize. No. Never have been. Purely because I could always look at, and it almost frustrates me where there's almost the expectation that, we're finding, like I'm getting a little bit older now, so I'm seeing a lot of younger people coming in with the expectation that I'm going to have the corner office when I'm 22 years old. It's like, dude, you haven't earned the right. You haven't learned the brutality and the hard knocks of life, because somehow along the way you had this perception that it was all going to be smooth sailing, and it's not. And it's perfectly imperfect by the fact that you're developing the characteristics and the traits that are going to serve you well as an adult. But in the process, it's not going to be all simple. No. And that's, to me, that I suddenly the temperature in my body just went up quite a bit, because I feel really passionate about it. I feel that we're not preparing people authentically about the truth of what's going on. And if they don't have references where they had to find some kind of struggle, some adversity, something they had to work through, they don't have a reference for it when things get really tough. And when you move to the other side of the world, as we've realized, and you basically, all the skills, all the tools, all the networks that you had aren't there, and it's just you and a foreign language. Or put that in your own world. You've got a business, you've got a new relationship, you've got a child, and it's all new to you. And if you don't have that capacity to find some strength or character trait within, you're going to struggle.
Absolutely. Jim, this has been a fascinating episode. I hope that you guys, the listeners or viewers, got something to know what Wabi Sabi is about, embracing your life in its perfections. And we're here to help you with your business, your brand, and making you better. That's what we're trying to really do. So until the next episode, make sure you tell other people about it. I hope you give us a like, comments, or share this on either YouTube, Facebook, wherever you find this on this podcast channel. And we look forward to sharing with you other episodes as we journey through the Wabi Sabi of our lives.